with a labour camp. Our China correspondent Lindsay Hilsum went along to visit them.
I've met unlikely rebels, but none quite like 79-year-old Mrs. Wu and her 77-year-old neighbour Mrs. Wang, who the Chinese government says have been disturbing public order by trying to protest about their compensation claim.
At first they said we'd be detained for 10 days. They didn't do it, but we had to stand by for detention any time. If they didn't call us, we could wait at home.
The police detained them for 10 hours. Hard for Mrs. Wang, who has no teeth.
They gave us stir-fried cucumber. She couldn't chew it, so I had to eat it instead.
Their good humour and determination are undiminished, even though the authorities cut off electricity to the single rooms they were allocated when their homes were demolished 7 years ago. They were delighted when they heard about the Olympic protest parks, until they were served with this document. It says,
according to the trial regulations of the re-education through Labour Article 10, items 3, 5 and 14, we hereby decide to send her to Labour camp for 1 year. We have confiscated the criminal tools.
That may be a reference to the fireworks they tried to let off as a protest. They've been told they can serve their sentence at home, where there are plenty of spies, who get short shrift from Mrs. Wu.
Come in and talk to us then. Stop peeping. How annoying. You come and help me remember what happened.
The spies were a little camera shy. It gives a whole new meaning to the concept of neighbourhood watch.
You can't be afraid. If you are, they come to bully you.
Neither of these ladies can read or write. One of them has such poor eyesight, she can't even see the characters on the document that the police served them when they said they'd been sentenced to re-education through labour. It's quite hard to understand how they could possibly be a danger to the state. Beijing's designated protest parks are quiet. None of the 77 applications received by the police were granted. That was a big disappointment to Mrs. Wu and Mrs. Wang, but the Olympic spokesman says everything's fine.
To solve problems, people should go through the legal process, not take to demonstrating. But Chinese law does allow demonstrations, so the applications were received by the authorities and worked on. I think this shows China's character.
Mrs. Wu and Mrs. Wang are poor and powerless.
They asked me to move, but I refused. They forced me out and threw my things on the street. Then they tore down my house. I ended up here. It's been like this since 2002. When the roof leaks, I walk round the room to stay dry. Nobody helps.
Their case is like hundreds of thousands of others. They just want adequate compensation. But they've been warned. If they try to protest again, they'll be carted off to labour camp. Lindsay Hilsum, Channel 4 News, Beijing.
The case of Mrs. Wu and Mrs. Wang.